Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. I am glad to share with you through this video a little bit of history of Islam in Indonesia by referring to one of the most vibrant ulama the country has ever had. His name is Hamzah Fansuri, and I think every Indonesian and those who study Indonesia or Islam in Indonesia will certainly be familiar with this person. He was born in the village called Barus on the island of Sumatra, very close from then the Achenese Sultanate. At the time, the Sultan of Aceh was Alauddin Riayat Shah, reigned from 1589 to 1604. And it is very important to remember that in this particular period of time, the Sultanate of Aceh, during the time and the time after that, when Sultan Iskandar Muda came to power, during this particular period of time, the Sultanate of Aceh has reached the golden age. It has a vibrant learning center, and also economically speaking, this Sultanate has also established a very strong link with other world power, including the Arabs, Chinese, Indian, and European. A lot of European, Arab, Indian, and Chinese came to this place to make business. Hamzah Fansuri, however, was a very close friend of the Sultan. He has developed a very close patronage with the Sultan. But the relationship with the Sultans as well as with the royal family was not always easy, particularly because of his intellectual leaning. During his time, Islam was very strong, and the dissemination of Islamic knowledge, not only on the island of Sumatra, but also on the island of Java, as well as other part of the country, Sulawesi for instance, has gone very well. The Sufis was around already in this 16th century of Christian era, but Hamzah Fansuri was considered to be the first Sufi ulama, the first vibrant Sufi who produced great works in many areas of Islamic knowledge. He was well versed in Islamic theology, in Islamic philosophy, in Sufism, and in other areas of Islamic knowledge. But because of his hunger, because of his thirst for knowledge, he traveled to many centers of Islamic learning. In Java, for instance, he spent many years in Java, many more years in Mecca, in Medina, in Gujarat, some of Persian towns, cities, to seek knowledge. Now, one of the Islamic sciences that has a great appeal to him was Sufism. Although he was a person of great interest in other Islamic knowledge as well, especially Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh. But it was Sufism that has a great appeal to him. And it is very likely that he came to be interested in Sufism when he visited Baghdad and some of Iranian or Persian cities. He said once in one of his poems that he is a follower of Qadiriyah Sufi order. That is to say that in terms of Sufi order, in terms of practical Sufism, he is affiliated with Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani. But in terms of thinking, in terms of discourse, in terms of intellectual Sufism, we got to differentiate between practical Sufism, tariqat, Sufi order, and intellectual Sufism, which is tasawwuf. In terms of tasawwuf, he is affiliated with Ibn Arabi. So he is a kind of a meeting spot between two great Sufis, between Abdul Qadir al-Jailani as well as Ibn Arabi. As a follower of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, he claimed to be a practical, or rather practicing Sufi, especially the tasawwuf that, as I said earlier, that what is name with spiritual lineage with Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani. But it is his ideas about Wahdatul Wujud that he learned, that he took from Ibn Arabi, that make him so legendary. In other words, he is best known as Ibn Arabian than Abdul Qadir Jailanian. His tariqah affiliation is not very much known. Little has been known about his tariqah affiliation. But with regard to his Sufi affiliation to Ibn Arabi, he is very well known. And it is with this in mind that it is safe to say that Hamzah Fansuri is the first Ibn Arabian in Indonesia as well as in the Malay archipelago. When I am talking about Malay archipelago, it includes Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and this Malay archipelago. So he must be considered as the first Ibn Arabian Sufi, the first philosophical Sufi, the first Sufi who brought the philosophical version of Sufism into the country. Many, however, thinks that Hamzah Fansuri's Sufistic discourses are syncretistic, theosophical, and peripatetic. I would say that we have to differentiate between philosophical Sufism and theosophy, as well as syncretism and peripatetic philosophy. I don't want to go too much deeper into the debate, but suffice to say that philosophical Sufism is not syncretistic, is not theosophical, is not peripatetic. In other words, I am reluctant to accept the view that Hamzah Fansuri's ideas are theosophical, syncretistic, and peripatetic. I would tend to say that his view is philosophical. Nor his view was pantheistic. Many would argue that Ibn Arabi's Sufism and the Sufism of his disciples as well as his students are pantheistic. Without going too much deeper into an argument about the difference between Sufism and pantheism, I would argue that Sufism must be differentiated from pantheism. Ibn Arabi's philosophy, Ibn Arabi's Sufism is not pantheistic. Let us come back to Hamzah Fansuri. Perhaps in other opportunity we can discuss about philosophical Sufism and pantheism. But in this particular episode, let me confine my discussion into the philosophical nature of Hamzah Fansuri's Sufism. Like Ibn Arabi, Hamzah Fansuri was a proponent of the so-called Wujudiyah philosophy. Wujudiyah is a philosophy about existence. But according to this Wujudiyah philosophy, Allah is deemed to be the only absolute existent. Other existence are not absolute. Other existence, human existence, existence of universe, is not real, is a metaphorical. Allah is the only real existent. It is from Allah that stems other existence. Human, the universe are originated from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The existence of a human being is not real, so much so that Hamzah Fansuri believes in the relative nature of human existence. And the existence of human being become real only and only when human being comes into the realization, the divine realization of Allah. In other words, when human is away from Allah, then he looks as if he is non-existent. But when human being is close from Allah, then he will acquire the existence from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if he is part of divine existence. Like many other Sufis, Hamzah Fansuri believes that human being is the manifestation, tajalli, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Human being is the mirror through which we can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other creatures of Allah are also mirrors of Allah. Universe, nature is also mirror through which we can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but human being, are the most complete manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, human must continuously revive the spiritual existence, because it is only in that way, it is only when human being is being spiritually clean, that human being can function as the mirror, as the manifestation, tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Interestingly, Hamzah Fansuri came to introduce very novel idea, seemingly not found in any other Sufist discourse, and that is that he speaks about what he called tanazul and taraqi. I don't think any Sufi in Indonesia and in other part of the world have ever spoke about this idea. Tanazul is about Allah descending to human being, and taraqi is about human being ascending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, there is two-way communication between Allah and human being, and this two-way communication has been described as tanazul and taraqi. By means of tanazul, Allah continuously reveals Himself to human being, especially to the adept one, to the selected one, to the ulama, to the Sufis, to those with pure heart. Allah will continuously descend to them. And therefore, the ulama, the Sufis, as well as many other people of knowledge in our religion, we have the concept of ilham. Ilham is very much similar to al-wahyu, revelation, but al-wahyu is exclusively ordained to the prophet and messengers, but ilham is given to ordinary human being, but these ordinary human beings are the adept ones, the selected ones. So it is by means of tanazul, of Allah descending Himself to human being, that Allah spoke to the adept, to the selected ulama and selected Sufis, those who have the purified soul and purified heart. But tanazul, Allah descend to human being is not enough. Human being must also ascend to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that to be human being, to be adept one, is to seek spiritual ascension, to take a persistent spiritual journey from this physical and material world into spiritual and metaphysical world. To speak very simply, human being should be in a continuous spiritual journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and human being must return again and again to the origin of the universe, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this process of of Allah descending to human being and human being ascending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not complete unless human being came into the realization of who is Allah and who is human being. Allah is the creator of the universe and human being is the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The spiritual realization that Hamzah Fansuri speaks about is of three grades. The first grade is the grade whereby human being realize that he is servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that Allah is the creator of the human being. This is the most simplest grade of spiritual realization. The second grade is when a person, the servant, through the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can witness the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is when you know, it is when a person discovers Allah, when he sees, for example, the beauty of the nature, when you discovered the grandeur of the universe, and when you discover that, you realize that there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind this grandeur of the universe. And the third grade is when a person feels as if he is being united with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This unity is, however, not empirical, not physical. It is spiritual, because empirical, physical unity with God is simply impossible. Man remains man and Allah remains Allah. There cannot be any physical unity between Allah and man. But in the teaching of Ibn Arabi, and Hamzah Fansuri agrees with that, man, it is possible for man to reach, to acquire spiritual unity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this spiritual unity is beyond human description, beyond human apprehension. And therefore, many Sufi would say that you cannot describe this particular spiritual experience, you must just feel it. And for that reason, I cannot elaborate what spiritual unity is. Lastly, Hamzah Fansuri also, in that very early period of the history of Islam in Indonesia, he spoke about emanation. He spoke about emanation. And this is very strange. Although I myself question the validity of him having spoken about this concept, I myself has a doubt whether he indeed has in mind the concept of emanation. However, some scholars believe that in that very early period of Islam in the country, Hamzah Fansuri has spoken about emanation. And emanation is about the concept whereby Allah, God, did not create the universe directly. He created the first reason the second reason, the third reason, until the 10th reason. And it is the 10th reason that created the human being. This concept of emanation is problematic, very complicated, and for me personally, it doesn't make sense. And personally, I don't believe that Hamzah Fansuri brought about this concept of emanation. However, the teaching of Hamzah Fansuri, as far as Wahdatul Wujud and emanation are concerned, has sparked a lot of controversies in the country right until now. And many scholars in Indonesia and from abroad, from Holland, from Germany, from France, from Australia, they studied very seriously the ideas of Hamzah Fansuri. And for many conventional, for many traditional Muslims, for many ordinary Muslims in the country, the ideas of Hamzah Fansuri are regarded to be detached from the normative form of Islam. That is the end of my presentation. I thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.